Raman, Finance Minister, has delivered her shortest budget speech yet. 90 minutes, as opposed to the previous speeches which have been usually over 2 hours. Nirmala Sitharaman's shortest budget speech, the fiscal deficit being pegged at 6.9% of GDP, sovereign green bonds to be issued, capex pegged at 7.5 lakh crores, taxation on digital assets, government setting a tax regime for digital assets. But broadly speaking, it seems that the government has chosen a path of tinkering very little with the existing taxation systems. They have chosen to try and focus on infrastructure, which was expected, and trying to send out the message that the government doesn't intend to stop the direction in which the economy is going at the moment. Remember, the finance minister claiming month of January has seen the highest GST collections at the moment. Rahul, in a sense, we were taken by surprise by just the short nature of the speech, but also the fact that it was remarkably short of the Big Bang announcements, which many people would think is the best thing that's happened. No attempt made to create any disruption. Instead, a belief that if you pursue this direction now and give the private sector enough opportunity by creating an enabling environment, that should kickstart the economy in itself.
So it still was 1 hour 30 minutes long, short only in comparison to the 2 hours 40 minutes she spent a couple of years ago, and therefore it seemed shorter.
But among the shorter ones, Rahul, in recent times, if you even look at, previous speeches of Arun Jaitley, and, the charge against Mr. Jaitley at the time was that there was a lot of tinkering being done, looking at specific sectors and looking at tax cuts or in some ways taxation on very, very specific sectors. This time, the finance ministers avoided tinkering too much. You get a sense that this is a government which has decided whatever it wishes to do, it'll do outside the budget, not so much in the budget.
And she said so in the budget. The whole idea that there be continuity, that there be predictability rather than any knee-jerk change. And that seems to be one of the guiding mottos for the finance minister. I want to go across to Subhash Chandra Garg, former Finance Secretary. And remember, on this India Today and Business Today coverage of the Union Budget, we'll have reactions from top experts, really sharp insights. We'll also have some of the key ministers joining us, key bureaucrats joining us as well. Subhash Garg, your sense on the message the finance minister has chosen to send in this budget, which laid very clearly a lot of emphasis on infrastructure.
Is it for me, Rahul?
Yes, sir.
Yes, so I think the budget, as you also noted, is devoid of any big bang announcements, it's devoid of any new schemes, it's devoid of any reform and policy movement forward. It's more like a routine kind of budget. Couple of things got sort of by their very nature noted very well. One is the capex increase from 5.5 lakh crores to about 7.5 lakh crores. But I think we will need to see a little more in details. But the facts available so far suggest that there is no real increase in the central government capital expenditure. The two items which explain the increase is, one, they've said that they will give 1 lakh crores to the state government as loans for capital expenditure. So then that in our accounts count as capital expenditure. And the second one announcement was that the government of India would issue green bonds, and the proceeds of which will be given to the central public sectors. For example, the hydro companies or IREDA or maybe NTPC. So that would be substituting the borrowings of the public sector by the government borrowing. So if these two items add up to about 2 lakh crores or more, then there is no effective increase on the capital expenditures.
Okay, Udayan Mukherjee is with us. Let's get his first take. The Finance Minister focusing on the PM Gati Shakti, inclusive development, productivity enhancement, energy transition, climate action and financing of investments. That's what she said were the key thrust areas of this budget. Udayan, your broad sense of what people should be making of all of what we've heard from the Finance Minister in the last 90 minutes?
Rahul, I think it's a growth-oriented budget. I will look at the fine print. The devil is always in the detail. But I think the key numbers which I said I would watch before the budget are A, the fiscal deficit, and B, the government capex program number. And the government capex number has come in at a growth of 35.5% for the current year, which was last year pegged at 26%. So we are going up from 5.54 lakh crores to 7.5 lakh crores. That's a 2 lakh crore increase. So I think that's the thrust of the budget, that the government capex will go up 35% this year. And in addition to that, there is assistance to the states which has gone up from 10,000 crores to 1 lakh crores for capex projects. So you put the two together and you might have created a 3 lakh crore plus kind of an additional boost for capex in this budget. And that is the real multiplier that we are talking about, which the stock market is celebrating. On the other hand, on fiscal prudence, 6.9% GDP for fiscal deficit GDP for on this year is a little higher than what was expected at 6.8%, but next year it's pegged at 6.4% along expected lines. So basically the message which has been sent out is growth has been prioritized, but not necessarily at the expense of a major detrimental fiscal deficit picture. So some fiscal moderation, but more growth prioritization, and that I think is the general message which comes out from the budget. There are many other small things to talk about, of course, like the tax on cryptocurrencies, digital assets at 30%. So that's a new one and it will be received with interest in many circles. But I think to cut a long story short, basically this has turned out to be a
explain what that essentially
budget.
means.
One hopes
this idea, Udayan, that there will be digital currency that the government hopes to come out with in this year. The RBI has been working on this idea. How does this impact people's lives? What does this essentially mean?
No, the two are different. What I meant earlier is that there was no taxation on digital assets till now. So, and there was lots of speculation on how, if you make profit on, say, Bitcoin, how would you be taxed? And now it's been made clear that there will be a 30% tax. Losses cannot be set off. Losses made on any kind of digital asset transfer cannot be set off. So there's a flat 30% tax on any kind of profits made on cryptocurrencies. So that's the one which needed clarity, and there is some clarity now on taxation on capital gains on made from cryptocurrency trading or investments. What you're talking about now is the digital rupee, for which the Reserve Bank of India has been authorized to come out with digital currency in the current year, and that would be a very, very interesting development to watch, because it becomes a digital medium or token of exchange and endorsed and fabricated by the Reserve Bank of India. So the two are a little different, they're connected, but I was talking more about the taxation aspect, which has now been clarified in this budget.
But you know, Udayan, you said in a way the narrative in the morning where you said you would judge this budget by what it did for those at the bottom of the pyramid. Now, there are some announcements in terms of health and education. There are some proposals for infrastructure. But the sense one gets, no relief really for the for middle classes. Middle classes looking as always for some relief after 2 tough years. No clarity on how those jobs are going to be created that will reduce unemployment or put money in the hands of people in terms of incomes. From that perspective, is this a lackluster budget, or do you believe that this is a budget where the real strength of it lies in its details and its unwillingness to create any disruption in the economic trajectory?
You know, Rajdeep, I would say that the government has clearly demonstrated and said through this budget that it prefers investment, infrastructure investment, as the route for any kind of economic recovery, rather than stimulating consumption directly by putting money in the hands of people. So create jobs and don't put extra money in the bank balances of people so that they can spend, and this is the difference in approach. The government can do one of two things. It can either go down the investment or infrastructure investment path, or it can go down the path that you're alluding to, which is basically stimulating through a consumption boost. And this budget is all about an infrastructure investment boost and no consumption boost, because there's no, in the direct tax segment barely took about 10 minutes because there was nothing to announce. I mean, you did a little bit on cryptocurrency, you did a 15% new manufacturing units tax, which has got extended by 1 year, which is very good. So basically what the government is saying, the heavy lifting will be done by infrastructure investment, which will create jobs in manufacturing of creation of roads, highways, railways, etc. And that will create the kind of demand which will feed back into the economy and drive the economy. So this is not a consumption budget at all, but one hopes that when jobs are created because of the infrastructure push, that will have that consumption multiplier, which will follow through to the point that you were making.